I'll quickly introduce these boys, embarrass them, and tell you all about their sparkling CVs. We've got Dylan Hartley, the most capped hooker in English history. He was telling me earlier. He asked me to lead with that. Dylan Hartley, of course, Saints front row stalwart, and played in 2011 World Cup in your home country, well, you know, where you grew up in New Zealand. So he's got some insights from there. We've got Ben Franks, Saints and All Black prop, tight head and loose head. Is it? Bit of everything.
Yeah, just wherever the coach.
Bit of everything. Ben's got 47 caps, is that right?
Yeah.
Which is about a bit like having 200 anywhere else because the All Blacks are so bloody good. And he's won 2 World Cups, so he's certainly got a lot to tell us. And then, of course, Harry on the end, who was the under-20s captain in the 2016 World Cup. They won that one. Harry scored 23 points in the final. Is that right? You don't remember. I remember. It was a hell of a day. So well done, everyone. I mean, we can end it there. We've already won. But talking of international rugby, it's every kind of schoolboy rugby player's dream to play for their country. When did you guys realise, we'll start with you, Dylan, that you maybe had what it takes to make that dream a reality?
Well, you've already alluded to my upbringing, so my first choice probably wasn't to be an English rugby player.
Okay, wow. Let's be honest.
I grew up in New Zealand. First joined my local club at 10 years old. And then I had an opportunity when I was 16 to come to England and play. And that's where professional rugby became a reality for me. I think the depth in Kiwi rugby it runs pretty deep, so the opportunity for me to progress and improve and make a career out of it wasn't there at the time, so I found a way to make that work. So I jumped on a plane at 16 and haven't been home since. No.
Wow. Well, we're very glad you're here.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for coming. Harry, you've been playing professional rugby since you were about 6.5, as far as I can tell, and you've probably been about as big as that as well. When did you realise that you were going to make the transition from just pretty good at rugby to a professional player?
I think for me, it was actually quite late. Until I actually moved to Northampton, I grew up in Manchester, and all I played was football and cricket. So it shocks a lot of people when I say it, but when I moved to Northampton when I was 12 years old, that was the first time I started playing. And up until about 16, 17, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but rugby and cricket were my 2 main sports. And at 17, I got told by Northants County that I had to make a choice. And it was then that I realised actually that rugby was what I wanted to do. So made that choice, and so far it's been an interesting one, but really enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Ben, of course, you were born and bred in New Zealand, and New Zealand, a tiny country with a tiny population in comparison to England, but seemed to dominate rugby for the last kind of century at least. What is it about New Zealand that makes so many good rugby players, and can we have some of it?
I think it's just the environment. I think if you look in any countries or companies or anything that are dominant, in New Zealand it's the number 1 sport, so the selection's minimal, so all the top talent goes to rugby. I said it's the number 1 game in New Zealand, so if you ever look at like a country like Brazil or something, they always talk about, they'll see kids in the street kicking a stone, they'll play football or anything. That's what New Zealand's like too. In the winter you'll go to any park and there'll be a game of rugby happening. The most important thing at school is before school, lunchtime and after school for rugby. And then in the summer months we play touch rugby, which quickly turns into tackle rugby anyway. So I suppose so the talent's been nurtured from a young age. You're talking about 4, 5, and then it's just the competitiveness for it. Like first 15 rugby, school rugby is huge in New Zealand. Like it's televised. It's probably the biggest rugby in New Zealand behind Super Rugby these days. So schools will be getting 10,000 plus to those. It's televised. So the pathway through to the All Blacks is quite intense, and I think all those factors lead to quite a lot of talent, even though it's a small population. Also, I think where New Zealand is, we're in the South Pacific, so we're a melting pot. Obviously, we've got the European influences from the settlers that come over, but we've got a lot of Polynesian influence too. You know, with their flair and size, so it's sort of quite a good mixture.
Yeah. And we're in mid-September now. The kind of back-to-school feel is in the air, and you're going back to those first matches after pre-season. Dylan, as a veteran of the Saints team, how do you welcome new boys who are starting the season in? What are the initiations? What do you put them through? We can go off the record. It won't leave this room apart from the microphones.
Do we have any? I don't know.
Not anymore.
Times have changed.
Oh, God.
They have. From when I kind of first started out, the drinking culture in rugby certainly changed, and it doesn't happen anymore.
Not even a song on the back of a bus, and
Yeah, that's kind of cringeworthy, and it's no one really
Isn't that the
commits
point?
to it. And I don't know. Unless you guys got anything that we used to do that we can talk about, or we do that we can talk about. But I just think the game's moved on.
Yeah.
You know, training's pretty intense now. Recovery's very important. But saying that after a win on a Saturday, it's always encouraged to have a couple of beers, and probably the significance of having a drink with someone, even if you don't drink. It's just spending that time together after preparing all week, and then ultimately performing and working hard for each other for 80 minutes. I think the significance of that beer or whatever it may be is still there within the game.
And Harry, you've been through the kind of age levels, and then you were called up to the England squad a couple of years ago for a tour. What was it like being the new boy with all the people you'd presumably watched on television and kind of idolised?
Yeah, I think it could have been quite intimidating from the outside, but actually having friends and teammates that were also there in Dylan and a handful of others helped, I think. And a really nice thing about that first tour was that a lot of the guys that I'd come through the pathway with from 16 up to that point had their first tour then as well. So, you know, the likes of Sam Underhill, the likes of the Curry brothers, Joe Cognasiga, these guys that are all hopefully going to be performing for England in a few weeks' time.
Fingers crossed, yeah.
We were all in it together, so, you know, there was probably 6 or 7 of us, and when it's like that, when you're with your mates who you've grown up with, it makes it a lot easier, that transition.
Good. And so what about pre-game rituals, if we can't talk about pre-season? Do you have any superstitions, any of you? Ben, have you got anything? Left sock, right sock, that kind of thing?
No, not at all. I've never been that way inclined. I've just always been big on routine. It's sort of leading into a game, you know, it makes me feel more relaxed knowing that I've done so. If I have anything, it's more my routine, sort of preparing, you know, sort of that Monday to Friday, just stepping stones along the way to make sure I can be as consistent as I can possibly be from each Saturday, because we play a lot of games, so you need to find a way. You know, you always have these your top performances, but you don't want to be followed with these you know, bad performances, because the way sport is now, year to year, you won't stick around that long. So me, it's just all routine and trying to stay consistent.
Of course. Dylan, what about you? Are there any kind of superstitions?
I reckon if I can reach my socks, I'm in a good place. Okay. I've got a bugger back, so if I can put my boots on, I think I'm going to be all right. But I haven't played rugby in 6 months, so I have to reinvent myself when I get back to playing.
Some lucky charms.
Something out,
yeah.
I'll tell you what's happened though since having a family is, I don't know what you do. You've got 2 kids, but I kind of forget that I'm playing. If I've got a home game, you kind of wake up, and you know when you wake up, you don't get your breakfast first. You sort your kids, and if you've got nappies to do, you do nappies first and bottles and things like that. I remember that kind of happening, and then thinking, shit, I haven't drunk any water today, and I've got to play a game in like an hour and a half. So you kind of panic, eat some poached eggs on toast, and I'm obviously not as professional as Ben. He's 42 years old and still playing, so he's forged a pretty good career for himself, talking about his process and that. But I've never been that way inclined. I'm a bit more relaxed about it. But I think being a bit more relaxed about it is how I like to approach a game.
Of course. I heard you shoot basketball hoops. Is that true?
Nah, that's bullshit. I don't know where you heard that.
No, not to keep your throwing in? I thought we were going to go on a big kind of...
I'll tell you what we do. Whenever I practice my throwing, we practice with different things.
Fun.
So we practice with footballs, basketballs, small balls, big balls, anything. So it's hand-eye, hands to target. So, yeah.
Okay, good. You've all travelled the world playing rugby. What are the worst stadiums to play in? I mean, the ones that are most intimidating. Who wants to kick that off? Which ones do you dread going through? Everyone says the Principality, which isn't the real name. The Millennium Stadium is the best.
My favourite
the
was
worst.
always Loftus in
Oh, yeah.
Pretoria, South Africa. Most of South Africa looks like, sort of some parts that look like it's changed since the 70s, but like they got the stadium, which may as well just be a dungeon. Like it's just a cage right around it, and South Africa's pretty intimidating as it is, especially the crowd that comes out for it. So we had quite a good rivalry, the Crusaders and Bulls, for a number of years, playing in the final for 4 or 5 years in a row. And as soon as you left the hotel, and the amount of security and guns around your bus, from the bus all the way to the stadium was big Afrikaans with their barbecues on the sideline, throwing at whatever they could at the bus. And
Yeah, wow.
but the atmosphere that created, like, it really was like, one to sort of
You're
savour.
Yeah, it's not like an intimidating thing. It's almost like the worst grounds, probably the best grounds to play at, because of the atmosphere,
They got a bit
the
of
tribalism
something.
that comes with it. You kind of go into Wales and winning in Wales because you know how much it's going to piss off everyone in Wales for a start. But I think those are the best places to play. Argentina is a great place to tour.
Yeah.
You basically bring a football crowd to a rugby game. Constant noise all game. I think, just anywhere that's hostile creates an atmosphere and almost a siege mentality, because rugby's it's a physical game, it's an emotional game. So you need, that just adds to the atmosphere. And a bit like Ben, anywhere that's you'd perceive to be horrible to play is probably the best place.
I've got one in when I played one of my first few games. I played at Kingsholm against Gloucester, and I've gone out, put my kit on, gone out to warm up, and I'd do my normal kicking routine. And I thought, I've heard all this chat about this shed and how intimidating it is, and how they really get in your face and they let you have it. I ran over there first up. I thought, I'm going to go across there and just give it to them back and just kick all my goals on that side, and then in a way put 2 fingers up to them and set the tone for the day. I ran over there. Before you know it, you've got 20 women about this far away, wheelchairs, webbed feet, calling you every name under the sun, and getting into me about my bleached blonde hair apparently, in this just getting into calling me a donkey for missing a kick and all this kind of stuff. So that was quite eye-opening for me. I was probably 17, 18, and I've waddled over there all confident, and they put me back in my box pretty quickly.
And what about, does there still sledging in the front row? Do you still get a bit of interprop niggle?
Not as much as it was. Like, I think me and Dylan were talking that. We're trying to remember what the original calls were. We're trying to, like when we first started, I was saying it was just crouch, engage. It was, and the scrum just to
chuck it
run
in
it.
there.
No one in the team remembers it, I think, apart from me and Dils, but we're trying to remember it.
Okay, it's
But
encouraging.
there used to be a bit more talk.
Yeah.
I found when I first started, because you're sort of lining up against each other for a bit, and then at the moment it's quite structured, so there's not as, and the game's twice as fast, so you're sort of blowing anyway. I'm not going to say much, but
Front rowers aren't the cleverest people. So whatever's being said, there's ladies in the room, so I'm not going to but you know, you're
Like,
fat,
it won't
no,
be
you're
cricket
fat.
sledging. Like we're not
No.
cricketers, you know. Like,
And what about referees? Do you,
don't like
Dylan?
them.
Do you? What's your relationship like with referees? I mean, you could have asked anyone. But do you find yourself giving a little bit of chat to them? Some people have quite a charming relationship with them. Others don't.
Slightly strange now because at one point you're Harry's age and you kind of you're on the up, and then you get to Frank's is older than me, so you get to Frank's age, and I'm only a couple of months older, but we're older than the refs.
Yeah.
So you're looking at these refs and they're kind of like mid-20s, and you feel like just saying, listen, young fella, you know, like, this is how it's going to be today.
Yeah.
But you've obviously still got to, you know, this is a good thing about rugby, when you're not calling them fucking cheats, you still call them sir.
Yeah.
That wasn't directed at the ref, by the way.
Okay. No, of
I
course.
did say it, but I didn't
Yeah.
say it to the ref.
Just a general comment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sledging in the front row, I was talking to the opposition front row.
Okay. And that's fine.
Genuinely was, yeah. But yeah, that's a great thing about the game. That still happens, you know, sir.
Yeah. Respect. I mean, respect. I'm not saying respect to you, but respect to you as well. So let's talk a little bit about the Rugby World Cup, because I'm sure you've got some great memories. It's the kind of pinnacle of anyone's career, and Ben, you've played in a few of them. What's it like on the evening of your debut? Do you sleep much? Are you having nightmares about messing up? What was it like?
Well, my first game for the All Blacks was it was a game. It wasn't a test match. It was against Munster in Limerick, and it was all of those things. I couldn't sleep, felt nervous,
Yeah.
but just it was sort of like a dream from a young age.
Yeah.
There's almost you couldn't really take it in. There was so much, you know, hard work had gone in to get to that moment. Managed to play well enough to get invited back again, but you know, it's such a cut-throat environment. You know, it's but it just goes so quick. Really, that's the only thing I remember. Like it takes so long to get there, and then. You know, the dream is, man, if I could just put that jersey on once, I'd just be so happy. But that's, you know, that's a big lie, because as soon as you put that jersey on once, you want to put it on again and again, and it doesn't matter how many times you put it on, it will never be enough, you know. So there isn't too many memories from my first game, just because it just went so fast. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
And Harry, you obviously won a World Cup, an Under-20s World Cup. What did you say in the changing room before? What are you a big speaker, or do you play music? What do you do to get them hyped up?
Well, I'll start off by saying the level of significance is a lot less than what these two guys have been through. But for me, that World Cup, that tournament was quite an emotional experience, because I'd missed the one the year before through a shoulder injury, and at the time you think, oh, it's never going to come round again. And you get to it, and you're playing with your mates in your hometown of Manchester with all your family around. So we didn't need to do any talking. A bit like the big games that you play in now. You don't need to do the talking, because everyone's done their preparation. Everyone's been on their own particular journey to get to that point. So there's nothing really that words. There's no influence that the words can have. It's more about going out there and doing your little bit to the team. But what I will say is, at the time, you think that the Under-20s World Cup is such a huge thing, and that everyone's watching you, and you play well in this, and you're going to play for England the next summer. And it helped with me. It gave me a bit of a platform to continue playing Premiership rugby. I got my call up to the senior tour the next year. But the reality of it is, I haven't played for England yet. So at the time, it's great, and I credit the pathway and the age group World Cups, because some people only get to that level, but I don't want that to be it for me.
Of course,
Uh,
I want to push on. So and hopefully get some experience these games that these two have played in.
Yeah, naturally. Dylan, you know the World Cup group who are going out to Japan now. You know them pretty well. You've captained them, most of them. What do you think they're going to be doing in this last couple of days? What are they thinking?
tough because there's a lot of turnover, and Harry just mentioned some young players there, and the game moves quick. It doesn't wait for you. You're injured 6 months, and I think there's 7 or 8 players in that squad that weren't there when I was there. So the game moves quick. I don't know what they're thinking right now. There probably is a jet lag there, probably trying to get over jet lag. But ultimately, I think there's a lot of relief because I know playing 4 warm-up games pre-World Cup, you put all your eggs in one basket saying World Cup, but you still got to get there. You've got to play 4 games to get there. Unfortunately, people get injured. You can play a bad game and then play yourself out of the team. Some guys have played their way into the team. So I think ultimately there's probably relief that they're finally there. They've been in camp for 2.5 months now, working, living in a hotel away from families. So relief to get there, relief to get the tournament underway. And I reckon just building quietly excited about playing their first game.
Yeah. Ben is the only man here who's worn a World Cup winner's medal. Do you have a kind of single sentence advice that we can take off you as Englishmen?
No, how do you put 4 years of work into to one sentence? That's the hard thing. You get asked all the time about the World Cup as sort of like this. What is it, 6 or 7 weeks? But I think it's important to remember. It's really 4 years, and that 4 years each year. Like, I know the All Blacks got reselected twice, so you had to be selected twice. You had to perform well for your club, and then that built on, and then 2 years they usually start cutting it down, and then for us, probably 3 months out from the World Cup, like England's gone through now, it's a squad of 40. Am I going to make this? I've invested so much, and then it gets to that sort of the last cut, and it's, for some it's the best feeling in the world, and then there's the large amount of guys who their dream ends. 2011 for the All Blacks, we were in South Africa, and they did that in a hotel. It was very much, look, if your phone rings, come to this room. If it doesn't, you're in.
God. Turn your phone off.
So it's tough, but I think that the toughest thing for the World Cup is there's not really anything to build to prepare you for a World Cup. Coaches do their best jobs, but there's no real format at that pressure where you're going to spend 6 weeks together in a foreign country. It's almost 24/7 for 6 weeks. There's no escaping it. So the hardest thing, and the advice would be is dealing with that pressure as a squad. How are you going to stay consistent in your preparation and your performance for that whole 6 weeks? And you'll see it, whenever you're under pressure for so long, people look for ways to escape, ways to get that relief, and that can be the small thing between winning and losing.
Of course. And Dylan, as Ben touched upon, there's professional sport is full of kind of highs and lows and injuries and setbacks. Are there any ways you in your career have kind of dealt with the lows and the more difficult times? I know Johnny Wilkinson is obviously a kind of...
Yeah, I just booked in basically a struggle every 18 months.
Nice.
The last 14 years, I've racked up 60 weeks of suspension, which is no one will ever beat, I don't think.
Wow. And you're still the most capped hooker.
Yeah.
Imagine how many you would have got.
I know. No, but genuinely, I honestly look at all those things, the struggles, as probably some of the best things that have happened to me, because I don't know, I think any time in life, in whatever sport in my case, when you're faced with a struggle, a misdemeanor, a problem, you have a choice, and I always found that the choice I've made is to take things head on and deal with these things, and ultimately set goals and work towards them and come back stronger than previous. And unfortunately for me, where I'm at now, this is the biggest kind of struggle I've been in. It's something that I feel I'm not in complete control of. And I've been working with the England team for 10 years now, and ultimately 4 years with Eddie, and all we talked about since day one was going to win the World Cup. and literally at the final hurdle, I can't get over my issue, and to not be there with the team doing it is frustrating.
Of course.
Yeah. But you just gotta crack on.
Naturally. We're here, of course, with Churches, and it would be remiss not to talk about these wonderful shoes on your feet. And I know, Dylan, you're particularly excited to talk about your personal style at some length to these boys. Can you sum up your personal style in one sentence, each of you? You're very distinctively dressed young men. Dylan, do you want to start?
Well, Harry's young, free and single.
Okay.
So he's usually got... do you want me to describe them?
No, yeah, okay.
It
seems to be working.
Do we get a go each?
So Harry, I mean, he makes an effort after training every day. Like, you always got good shoes on. You're always well presented. Hair's always good. Like, he makes an effort. He makes an effort. Frank's is from New Zealand, so to get him in a pair of shoes and a pair of trousers is actually impressive. And because I'm Anglo-Kiwi, I kind of sit somewhere in between, I think. I mainly wear like training gear or farm clothes.
Okay.
But then
It's the same as me.
yeah, but then
Exactly.
I've got to bang a suit on tomorrow. You know? So
Okay,
I don't think you own a suit, do you?
Just for wedding suit.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, thank you. That's a thorough rundown.
Like naked, like birthday suit, like your wedding suit.
Yeah, true, yeah.
Fashion's amazing though, and the way that as a playing group we deal with each other's little takes on what looks nice and what doesn't. Yeah. The interaction every morning with what people come in at is hilarious. Just seeing the way it's the topic of conversation all day, every day. Did you see his shoes?
Yeah.
Like how bad were they? Or you wearing your sister's leggings tonight? Or whatever it is.
Who's the worst?
Someone wears boat shoes around and they end up in the pond every day. Things happen. I've seen Chris Ashton when he played at the club. He used to cut people's clothes up.
Wow, God, that sounds like Chris Ashton.
It's basically, when you're a kid, you get a haircut and you're going to walk down to the bus stop. This is what happened to me anyway. You'd be a bit nervous, people are going to recognise your haircut and you don't know you're going to be judged. So I think if someone really steps out of the box in terms of what they're going to wear, they know they're going to face 50 blokes ready to get stuck into them. So a lot of people are quite conservative. I think turning up in your training kit is probably the safest bit. But then there's these people that wear their training kit out and about, which is
horrendous.
When you're in a professional sports team, it's not what you do.
The worst crime.
You don't go for, like
what, they're hoping they'll get spotted in the pub?
Paul Hill, one of the younger guys that plays the same position as Ben, he wore like his Saints training kit to a nightclub one night.
Wow.
It's just like...
Did it work?
No.
That's a shame.
Not with his
Who's the worst dressed then? Who's chronically bad?
He'd be up there.
Really?
He not there's anything wrong with this, but he loves the charity shop garment, which is fine. But the fact that they don't fit him at all doesn't help. I think he wears some of his missus' clothes as well.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, not so good. Not so good.
And which nation of rugby players do you think is the best dressed then? We've got some different nationalities here. The Italians must be all right. Beware that Churches is now, of course, owned by...
It's definitely not New Zealand. We don't in that category.
A lot of farmers in New Zealand. Not that farmers aren't well dressed, but there are a lot of farmers in New Zealand.
Yeah, it's sort of extreme. You go from like country wear to like guys who wear basketball singlets everywhere. There's no like. How old do you need to be before you can't wear a basketball singlet? Like?
I don't know. It's a great question. What about the French? Are they, when you see them after a game, they must be pretty slick? No.
Not sure on the French. From memory, when I used to play like Six Nations tournaments, and you'd play the Italians, and you'd be given your suit, and it would either be 3/4 length or it'd be over your fingers. And then you'd see these Italians, like nice tailored suits, looking fresh, little 3-piece.
And the worst thing is, it was usually the same company doing their suits.
Yeah.
So you go in and you get pinned up, you get fit up, you're like, sweet, tailored suits. Then they come back and they're completely the opposite of what you measured
Someone's
up
gone
for.
like that. Just put
Yeah.
him in that one and him in that one. Yeah, it doesn't end well.
Okay, good. Right, before we open up for some questions, I wanted to ask you about your kind of World Cup predictions and see if we can work out who's going to win it. We'll start off with which kind of wildcard team do you each think could do unexpectedly well and cause a real upset? Dylan, do you want to start?
Yeah, I don't think they will go on to win the tournament, but I think there's always a tournament team that do really well. I think Fiji out of the Pacific Islands could be a wild card. I think the playing group they've got and the coaching that they've got, they could surprise a few people. So Fiji maybe to cause an upset somewhere.
Ben, what about you?
Yeah, I was going to go Fiji, but I think a team that hasn't performed too well, Australia, just from knowing and playing them a lot, they get confident very quick. They could win one game and be fairly confident. So I think if they can get out of their pool stage well, and then, if they win a quarter final, you sort of like the last World Cup here, they didn't go in a very good form and then managed to pick it up in the World Cup. So I think they've sort of been under the radar a bit.
Yeah. What do you think, Harry?
I would agree with that, Australia, because they've almost not been written off, but no one's talking them up to win, and that sometimes helps. I know from when you've gone into games before and everyone's written you off and everyone's saying how bad you were the week before, sometimes it's nice. You catch the other teams off guard. So, yeah, potentially Australia.
Well, equally it removes pressure as well. It's like what you're talking about, being in a tournament and having expectation and pressure on you. Going in as ranked number one in the world in Ireland, Wales are the Grand Slam champions. How do teams deal with that pressure? Or are you better off being the All Blacks, for example, who have lost to South Africa, lost to Ireland? So unfortunately the expectation with the All Blacks is still there, but maybe I think England, they're peaking quite nicely. So yeah, I think removing the pressure off a team like Australia.
I think Japan also. I don't think they'd win it, but could easily trip up a team. Similar like a Fiji. I think they're more than capable of tripping up a couple of teams.
Of course.
I hope that wasn't a reference to their height.
Not on purpose.
What about individual players? Who do we think is peaking at the right time to have the tournament of their lives and maybe win player of the tournament?
I think Artie Savia's sort of come on leaps and bounds. Sort of the last. Well, he's always been a great player, but just this Super Rugby season leading into the All Blacks, he's been one of their best players, and I think he could play a big role for the All Blacks. Harry,
who do you reckon?
This is a real outside shout, but my mate Lewis Ludlam.
Nice.
He's it's almost been like fairy tale for him the last couple of months. But knowing what he's like as a guy, I think he, if given the opportunities, which it looks like Eddie might give him a few chances, I think he could make a real difference to the team. And then anything can happen.
Yeah.
So Lewis Ludlam, he plays at Northampton with us, and a year ago, our boss flew over from New Zealand, and he had a spare week. He wasn't yet in a permanent role at the club, but he came to watch a few players, and he said he went and watched Lewis play. Was it a Monday night game?
Yeah, second
and
team game.
He was working out his squad for the following year, who to keep, who to release, who to re-sign, these things, and he wasn't sure about Lewis. And within the space of a year, he's gone from a guy basically playing for a contract on a Monday night to being capped by England and off to a World Cup. So when you say fairy tale, he's at a whirlwind kind of 11 months, which is amazing.
And is there anyone else you think might?
I think if England can keep Manu Tuilagi fit, he's looking fit, he's looking powerful, he's invaluable to that team. So very quietly, I don't want to
Okay, don't want to jinx it.
No.
And talking of jinxing it, gun to your head, who's going to win it, each of you? Dylan?
Frustratingly, England.
Okay, good. England?
Which is great,
But yeah.
But yeah.
Well, again, I always go New Zealand, but I think the other two teams, I think England's got a good shot because I like what they can do with their forward pack. They can actually pick a really heavy forward pack, or if they come up against, if they want to play the fast game, they can put a guy like Lewis and do that too. And I don't think they've, from playing England in the past, I don't think they always had those options.
Yeah.
And I think South Africa's very similar too. Like they're in good form, like England, but they can also go a super heavy pack if they come up against New Zealand. They could go super heavy, or they could play super fast. They've got enough talent to do that.
Of course. Harry, your prediction?
I hope England, and I do think that they've got a good chance. But again, New Zealand would be probably my second shout, just because of they seem to be able to turn it on in the big tournaments, big games, irrespective of what's happened the last few weeks with their fixtures. So, yeah, I reckon England, New Zealand.
Good. 2 Englands. That means we're going to definitely win. Right, fingers crossed. So I think we can have a couple of questions. I don't know where's Robbie? He did have a microphone. There he's right in the middle. Perfect. Has anybody got a burning question for one of these 3 chaps up here? We've got one down here. Well, you haven't got a microphone. Shout it out. Go on. Project.
So you've seen how South Africa turn things around. Should countries care whether players play?
You mean their club rugby? Yeah, yeah.
Should they care?
Well, a different view on that. I take New Zealand for example. Again, rather than only 4 million people, if New Zealand didn't have the law of if you stay in New Zealand you can play for the All Blacks would struggle, just because New Zealand's a small country, small economy. Like you're just never going to compete with what, in terms of money, they can't compete with them anyway. So to have that carrot that if you stay here you get to represent this jersey, that's a big carrot, which obviously still holds a lot of weight because a lot of guys will stay until that option's gone and then head overseas.
This gentleman here. There's a microphone coming around. If you want to use that, it's quite fun.
Danny Cipriani. Views, should he be there? Did he get the option? Did he get the chance? Been missed out in some of the England games, obviously, of what he did in his playing career in the media. You think he should have got a chance? You think he's the one that's going to get called up later on for injury?
What do you think, Dylan, knowing him, playing with him?
There's a lot of questions there. Which one?
Which question?
Danny Cipriani, just, ultra talented guy. Irrelevant what you think, relevant what I think. Eddie Jones is the man that needed convincing, and I think, especially with a key position, 10, where Danny would play, he's had George Ford and Owen Farrell there for that 4 years prep, or even longer, that Ben just talked about, to come in and change the way the team was probably run, and how the team wanted to play at the final hour. Maybe is why he doesn't have a place in that team.
If worst case
I
scenario,
don't know though.
no. George Ford and Owen Farrell get injured, like New Zealand 2011 when they went through 19 fly halves or something. Who's going to step up? Piers Francis.
Yeah.
We'll play a 10.
Straight in.
Does he do that? Okay, fair enough. Any more questions out there? This gentleman here.
Hi gents. Best player each of you have played against, and why?
For me, easily someone like Quade Cooper.
Oh.
Just being a larger gentleman with very little or no mobility, respecting the threat in front of you. So, big guy comes around the corner, runs straight at you. That's bread and butter. You can deal with that. But when you've got a guy who seems to have time and find space with the ball in hand, with footwork, agility, whatever you want to call it, that was always not a fear, but just very aware where he was and where you were positioned when defending him.
Yeah, for me it'd be Charles Piatow.
Yeah,
Played against him when he was at Ulster, and he made me fall over 4 or 5 times. And I'm still trying to work out how it happened. Just the guy, he can do. He's one of those players that can do everything, so that becomes difficult to play against for obvious reasons. You don't know whether he's going to pass the ball, run round you, run through you. So that was quite an eye-opening experience for me, playing against him. There's not been many players that have just had a one-on-one battle with in a game where he's just made you feel like that before. So that was an interesting one.
Ben?
Probably Kevin Mialamu. He was just a tough player, but the worst thing was he was so bloody nice. Like he was the nicest guy I've ever met. It always throws you off when you come across them because then on the field he's just a different animal. And thankfully we become good mates, but it was always a really tough battle against.
Right, one more question if there is one. Anyone burning? Oh, we've got 2. Anthony, I've got to give it to you.
Yeah, okay. Simple, boss. Just assuming you're in the final against New Zealand World Cup in Japan, 4 minutes to go, 4 points down. There's an injury. You're in the huddle. What are you going to tell you guys?
Shit, you haven't watched any games recently, have you? I only played to 42 minutes and I was subbed, so I wouldn't be on the field here. Jamie George would be in there giving it the rousing speech. 4 points down, there's only one option though, isn't there?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's it. Kick to the corner.
What are you going to tell them? Hey guys, how you
Where are we on the field? I need the scenario proper mapped out. I'd say
25 and you're putting the ball in the scrum. You've got the ball.
I'd hand it over to Owen Farrell, the real captain. Honestly, just trust the process, keep the ball, don't try and force anything. Bit like we talked about in that meeting today, keeping the ball in those situations is more important than because teams, especially on their own line, defending phase after phase, referees want to reward the attacking team, so keeping the ball is your most important thing, not forcing anything.
Sure.
Ask the All Black, they'll probably say, go for it. Go for it, chance it, and
win.
did you play in that game in Dublin?
Yeah.
Scored the last play of the game?
Yeah.
What was the chat there? Did Liam score that? No.
Ryan Crotty.
Right.
Well, that game, we'd played awful the first half, and sort of leading up to those games, we'd sort of had 2 teams, like we'd had, they call them now, it's not the bench anymore, it's the finishers. So we had a lot of confidence in the finishers. So it was actually, the first half was quite hectic because nothing was going right, and then it's become quite calm. And I think a lot of times, when you need to score, you don't really want to focus on the scoring. You've got to focus on doing the little things really well, like a clean out, or make sure you're doing your role and whatever the play is. So a lot of those times you just got to simplify it right down to something small, and if you're all 15 of you doing those small things, it'll lead to that big thing. And in that case, I think we went through quite a number of phases of just building pressure, which led to a try right in the corner.
Absolutely. You make your own luck in life. Wonderful. Well, we'll bring a whiteboard next time to do a full debrief of that. But thanks very much, everyone, for coming. And thanks, of course, to Dylan, Ben and Harry for being such wonderful panellists, and to Churches and Anthony and everyone for having us. I guess we can wrap it up there. Let's give them a round of applause, obviously. Yeah.